Good afternoon and welcome everyone. We're going to go and get started. We're going to give folks just a few more minutes to get in, but I'll start with introducing myself and also the topic today. So I'm Jesse Spencer Smith, and I'm Chief Data Scientist and Director of the Data Science Institute, and also Associate Dean for the College of Connected Computing here at Vanderbilt University. And you're part of an AI Flash. So AI flashes are programs that we set up about 1 hour long each to cover new important technologies when they're released. So we don't do this on a regular basis. We do this whenever there are advancements that are important to talk about. And we have recently absolutely had some of those just from this past week. So some of you may or may not have been aware that Anthropic dropped a new model called Claude Sonnet 4.5. This in itself was important to note, simply because it's a very good model. It's probably now the best model at coding, and there are a couple of remarkable achievements already from this Sonnet 4.5 model. One of them is sustained effort at programming a very complex programming job for over 30 hours independently. That's the longest we were able to go previously. Was more on the order of 7 hours. So to go over a day of independent work solving complex problems is pretty remarkable. But actually, what we're going to be talking about today is something that you might have missed, which is also important. And we're going to start from the very beginning and work our way through. And the new capability of the Sonnet 4.5 model is this. And it doesn't sound like too much when you say it out loud, but the Sonnet 4.5 model can now directly create workbooks, Excel workbooks. It can also directly create PowerPoint presentations and also create PDFs and Word files. So why is this important? Um, why does this matter so much? It actually matters so much that it is going to be affecting jobs. It's going to be affecting your productivity. It also opens up the door a bit to what agentic capabilities are coming and what's available here now. So let's actually begin by trying out something with Claude Sonnet and see if we can't solve a problem together. So here's a problem that I have, and I'm betting it's a problem you have too. And that is I have to put in and give expense reports. This is not a job I love. Uh, so I spend a fair amount of my time actually taking pictures of my receipts and then figuring out how to actually get all this information and then actually how to put this into a spreadsheet that I can then pass on to somebody else. So it turns out that with the new capabilities of Claude Sonnet 4.5, you could use this directly, and you can do this directly using the interface that you're seeing right up here. And this interface really is just the regular chatbot interface. Now, as with any interaction with any AI model, you're going to want to give it plenty of context. So here's the context that I gave it for my particular problem. I need to create a Vanderbilt University expense reimbursement report. Please create an Excel worksheet, a spreadsheet with the following columns. Now, these are the columns I actually, went there, figured out what I would need to fill in, and it's all this information. And probably the toughest one is the expense type column, which has to be one of these long number of different types of expenses. And uh, and so what I'm going to say is go ahead and from just an image, go ahead and fill out a spreadsheet. Make a spreadsheet for me, then fill out the spreadsheet, and and let's actually then let me just upload images and then fill it in for me. So this is one that I've already run, but I'm gonna see if we can't just run one directly from scratch. Okay, so we're gonna start up Claude. So here we have Claude, and then I'm gonna put that prompt in that I was just showing you, and we're just gonna run it directly live and see what this looks like. So here's that prompt that I had. So I need to create a workbook. Go ahead and do all of this for me. I'm going to run it. And so it's going to, oh, so this is interesting. So I'll create a workbook with all the specifications outlined. Notice what's happening right here. So what's happening is it is writing code. It's writing computer code, which is then going to be creating a workbook. So what's happening here is it's written Python code meeting my requirements and then creating a workbook that I will have access to. So it's created the workbook. It has all this information, and then it's going to give it to me so I can so I can download this. So so it's gone through. It's created the expense workbook. Here's the workbook features, and then it says I can download it. So I'm going to go ahead and download it. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And this is what the spreadsheet looks like. So it's actually pre-populated because I've actually run this before once, but notice it has all of this information in here. So it's working. That's lovely. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload an image. The image is going to be just of some expense that I've had. It's going to be a receipt that I've had. So I'm just going to drop this in here. So I've dropped in the receipt. Here's the receipt. It's from Walmart. It's for a bunch of syrup. So I'm actually faculty head of house for Sutherland House, and we made pancakes for 180 students. So I had to buy a lot of syrup. So that's what this expense is. So I've given it. I'm going to submit it. And it's going to go through. It's going to pick up the details from the receipt. And it's going to ask me about the categories. I'm going to say category. I'm going to say 1, general food item. And now notice that it's running the Python again. So what's happening, it's running the Python to modify the workbook, which we will then be able to download, which will have this additional receipt information in. So it's added, and now the total is up to this. So this is a very useful example. It's great to be able to create this workbook and then to download the workbook as needed. But it turns out you can do far more complicated types of workbooks other than just getting information and filling information in. And I'll give you one very complex example. Uh, about 3 weeks ago, we were presenting to senior executives, senior executive service in the U.S. Army, and we had folks from a number of branches that needed to optimize contract awards. So create an Excel workbook that optimizes contract award decisions using integer programming and solver. So it turns out that Excel has a great number of capabilities, a remarkable number of capabilities, including the ability to solve complex problems, optimization problems. And this went through over about a 20-minute period, creating a workbook that would allow us to actually go through and analyze very complex types of contracts. And here's what this workbook looked like. So here's some contract data. This is correlation matrix, how these contracts were related to one another, a risk analysis of the different particular functions that we might need. So these were Lambda functions, very advanced functionality in Excel. Here's documentation of how it did what it did, including the mathematical formulas that it used that it put directly in here. Gave advice exactly on how to run solver, and then actually ran it and came up with the optimal selection of contracts to go with to minimize risk and cost and person hours. Remarkable amount of work, and created a workbook that we can then continue to iterate on. Up to this point, when we had our chatbot do this type of work, we could work with the chatbot. We could certainly, interact with it, but we couldn't interact with the numbers and how it was calculating. It was always one step removed. So now we can directly see the work, modify the work, and create something that for many of us is a standard work product, which is the workbook. Let me pause here. What questions do you have so far about these kinds of capabilities? The ability to make workbooks. What questions do you have? And feel free to go ahead and put that into the chat. Okay, now,
Jesse, sorry, this is Bill. So,
yes,
so
Bill.
are is there a list of workbooks it knows about, like Excel, or what if I'm using weird stuff like Jupyter Notebooks or Mathematica or MATLAB or something like that?
So it is going to be using, so it's going to be using, for this capability, it's going to be Excel workbooks. It has absolutely the ability to write Python notebooks and others as well. So I mean, you're not limited to this, but it's the very first time we've been able to write Excel notebooks directly. There is a person who's been writing on this that I like a great deal. This is Nate B. Jones. I highly recommend if you're interested in getting a good start on writing prompts to make a good prompts to create workbooks. So I'd suggest visiting Nate B. Jones. He's in a number of places, including in Substack. So I would suggest going there. Let's go and take a step back though. What's actually happening right here? Because this actually seems a bit strange what's happening. We're interacting with a chat bot, and then the chat bot is doing something, and then we're able to download code. So it turns out that what's happening is that the chatbot. So this is an LLM. This is a generative AI model right here that we're looking at right here. Here's here's the type of chat that we might be giving it, and it goes through, does some processing. If you're unfamiliar with this, you can look at some of our previous information. But here you can see here we have the chat here, and then here you can see the actual architecture. What's happening is that the chatbot is actually calling its own internal computer. So it actually has its own dedicated computer instance that it's able to call. And what's happening now is it has a flexible instance. It can search for needed packages, and it can use Python to directly create Excel workbooks, PowerPoints, or PDFs. So what's happening now is the LLM itself can actually write Python to create these workbooks and these PowerPoints and PDFs that we can then download. So this is a way where we can directly create files that we can use using an LLM. So let me pause again. What questions do you have about what's happening here that allows us to generate workbooks directly from a chatbot? Okay, we have a good question about I work in RPF. I could send data from a given automation to the model and output the Excel sheet. You could, but you're going to find an even better way of doing this in just one moment because there's a problem here. So, and we'll see what the problem is, but note what's happening right here. All your interaction, you only get to interact here, and then it's going to create the workbook for you. Then you can download it and work with it. So here's where we run into a bit of a problem. Let's say I have something like this. Right here, I have a long transcript of, uh, of information that I want to go through, and I want to clean this up, and I want to fix this. And the only way for me to work when I'm working with interactively with a chatbot is I give it the entire transcript. It tries to work with it, create something for me so I can download. But sometimes we can hit context limits, or there's just so much information it gets lost. So it turns out there is another way of working with AI where we don't just have to go through the chatbot. We can actually solve the problem and work with it directly. And here's what it looks like. So note here what's happening. We're interacting with the chatbot, and then we're using a dedicated computer instance that we don't have direct access to. So it'd be really great if I could just upload this information directly to that computer instance, but we can't because we don't have access to it. So what about the following? What if we actually ran everything on our own computer? So what if we could have the chatbot run things on our computer? Think about this, what this would mean. This would mean the chatbot could directly make calls on our computer, could run programs, in a protected space, but that means you'd have your files, your software, your services, your work. And that's exactly what's also possible now. It's been possible for a little while, but the capabilities of this have even grown. So this is called Claude Code. Others have other ways of doing this as well, but Claude Code right now is probably the easiest and the most popular way to access capabilities of your computer. So again, what's happening here? You are interacting. You're able to interact directly with the LLM, but you're also able to interact directly with your computer. Let's go and take a look and see what this looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and does require you to go to your command line, but we are going to have workshops on this, so don't be too concerned about this being command line. This is command line. This is the terminal on my Mac, and I'm going to call Claude. So I've installed Claude Code. I'm going to ask to Claude start, and I'm going to say, hey, do you want me to do these things? Can you do you trust me? And do I trust things in this subdirectory? And I say yes. So now I can ask it to do things. So here's something here's the problem that I was trying to do. I wanted to clean up a Zoom transcript. So previously I tried to upload the Zoom transcript and have Claude do it, but it couldn't do it. It was too long. It got confused. It broke. So instead, I'm running Claude, and Claude is able to see the file locally on my computer. I'll help you clean up the Zoom transcript by removing, and Miguel, one of our program managers here, it was on his Zoom, so we wanted to clean it up. And so now what's happening is it's running and actually running a file, actually running a command line on my computer. All the work is happening on my computer. Claude is having to do very little. All that Claude had to write was the command. So it wrote the command to do the thing, and it's done. So now you have the ability to have an assistant that could run, again, access files that are in your subdirectory, access your software, access your services, and do work on your computer. So let me pause here for a moment. What questions do you have? And then we're going to start another pretty extensive example of what this is going to look like. What questions do you have so far about this type of interaction? And actually, Andrew, let me answer your question first. You work in RPA. You can see that this is, in some sense, a very flexible kind of automation, right? So you have the AI, which is able to interact with any files which are on your machine. So you can imagine automating tasks in this way. There are other capabilities that you can draw on, and if we have time, I'll get into some of those as well. But you can see that you can describe what needs to be done and then have that task taken care of and running locally on your computer. What other questions do you have? So Caleb, you ask, are there equivalents of what Claude Code can do available from any other LLM providers? Yes, but it is a bit different. So uh, Claude Code is interesting because it's running locally on your computer. As a matter of fact, they've renamed their software development kit from Claude Code to Claude Agent SDK because I think they're realizing that there are many different types of workflows that can be supported by this. For example, this was not programming that we did here, right? This was actually us doing a task. So they're thinking this is a general purpose agent. From OpenAI, you do have Codex. Codex is fantastic. Codex is running on yet another instance. It's not running on your machine necessarily. So it's not going to be It's not going to have access to the software that you have installed on your machine, for example, or your services. You'll be able to move your files up, but again, it's an idea. The idea is that you're running on another compute engine. For many of the workflows that I have, I want to be able to access things that are available on my computer. So that's why I've been using Claude Code. Tom, you asked, does Claude Code have the ability to actually code, test, and release an app on my local machine? Sure does. As a matter of fact, we're going to go ahead and try this out. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go to another Claude instance, and so I'm in something called calendar. So I'm just going to say, show me the files here. So it's going to show me all the files. Oh, and this one. Okay, great. So here in the subdirectory, it has these different files, and so these files come from this particular interaction that I had. So first of all, I have a prompt. I recorded a transfer. I got a transcript of a conversation that I had about a calendar application that some folks wanted to write. So this was a long running conversation over an hour. And what I did first was I had Claude Code go through this transcript and then come up with specifications for me, for specifications for a program. So it's important, again, context is everything. So I had to come up with the full specifications for my project, and that's exactly what it did here. So it came up with um, a different files, critical clarification questions, implementation roadmap, risk assessment analysis. So it did quite a bit of work here. And what I have done now is I've brought them local and I've put them into this subdirectory. And I'm going to say, using the guidance documents provided, code this application. Use Python, uh, ensure that tests are created and run as specified in the documents. So in the documents, it actually has quite a bit of information. So now it's going to read the documents. So it's going through, it's reading them, pulling them in. It may come back with questions, but at this point, it's off to the races. Uh, it could run for hours. So coding, testing. So first it's going to come up with a plan, project structure, core files. But I'm just going to be letting this run. It's not going to finish before we're done here. But I'll let this sort of run in the background so you can sort of see what it's doing as I'm answering additional questions. So what other questions do you have now
Hey,
about Claude
Jesse,
Code? Go ahead.
this is Bill. So one is a question about at the moment we see your screen share with a quarter of it being your image. So we're
Yes.
losing the quarter of it. Is that as you intended?
Well, actually, it may be with older clients, it may not be showing correctly. So let me go ahead and I'm going to change that screen share so it will look a little bit different, and it'll make it a little bit easier for you all to see or
And
to
my real
screen.
question may not be so specific, but boy,
Oh,
it
that's
feels
fine.
like
So here you go. Now you should see the entire screen. It won't be quite so
that,
fancy.
yes, that works for me. Thank you. So my real question would be, boy, I can imagine a lot of IT people yelling security, 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 right? I've now got this entity working on my computer, which is inside some privileged network somewhere. I don't know, lots of other situations like that.
No, absolutely. And so that's why you've got there are ways to run it very securely and there are ways to run it very insecurely. One is it does ask request permissions, and those permissions are only good for the subdirectory that it's in. So for example, this would be a terrible, horrible, very bad idea to run Claude Code at your root directory, right? Because then it has access to everything on your laptop. So how do you run it securely? You go at the lowest level directory and you make sure it only has access to those. You want to be even more secure? Go ahead and run a virtual machine, where you actually block off everything. You have to open up ports, and so it can actually get to Claude, but you can do that as well. So you can run it extraordinarily securely or less securely. And did you have another question? I have another question from Nate, but did you have another question, Bill?
No, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Is there a way to define boilerplate prompts for Claude Code to follow during all interactions? Any output files, should have the date format? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, a common way to do this is to create a file which is called claude.md. You can call it other things as well, and you can say, always follow these instructions. Uh, Claude Code has really matured. So there are absolutely ways to put guidance in particular areas, and so Claude will always follow those requirements. As a matter of fact, that's one way to turn Claude Code from a coding agent into a general purpose assistant as well. So in your subdirectory that you're working in, if you're doing a scientific workflow, because it works extraordinarily well for that, go ahead and include important white papers, important guidance, and then maybe even have guidance specifically for the area that you're working in. And provide that guidance and say, always follow the guidance in this document. And use the other documents in the subdirectory to guide your thinking and your work. That's a very good way to control a Claude Code. Muriel, you're asking is if Magic is using Claude Code. So Magic is being developed here at Vanderbilt University by our Center for Generative AI, Claude, Jules White, Alan Carnes, and the entire development team. Yes, they are using Claude Code underneath, but they also have another custom type of program that they're using. So they used Claude Code to create a custom homegrown version of Claude Code, which they also use. Absolutely. And that is, they're using it almost as a tool in and of itself. I describe what's going to be happening, and then Claude Code in the background creates the tool for me and then exposes the tool. So what they've done is exactly what Nathan was just asking about, which is create boilerplate code saying, here's the situation when you're writing, expose in this way, solve this problem, but always respond in this way. So yes, you could use Claude Code itself as a tool to just create new tools for you, which will then be exposed. So yes, Magic uses Claude Code. John, you asked, how is the newest model at self-validation? How well can it check its own work? It can do this extremely well because it has what I would call a very long reasoning horizon and a long run horizon. We know that models can run out of context length. When they run out of context length, game over, right? It's done. But when you're doing something like Claude Code, instead of just stopping, it notices when it gets close, it summarizes what came before, or it even writes another file out to your file subsystem, your file subdirectory, so it can restart afresh, remind itself what it was doing, access those same files, and continue. So now what you can do is you can describe the tests you want to have. They can be kind of long running if you need to. You can have tests, given this input, it ought to produce this output. If you have scientific workflows, then you put those properties that must be true in order for this analysis to be correct. So if it's business, these columns should sum together. If it's scientific workflow, you should always find these particular types of invariants. If it is another kind of a problem that you're solving, you could say something along the lines of, I started with 158 entities. The final Excel worksheet should have 158 entities. These are all tests you can ask it to run. And because it has its ability to restart itself when necessary, you have plenty of room to be able to do this. And the model does a great job of keeping track of where it was, where it is, and what it needs to do next. So, Jason, um, Jason, you're asking, you're a little bit late, but why use Claude over another one? Are there certain benefits? So the main benefit is this is running locally. So Claude Code right now is running in my subdirectory, and so has access to my files. And this is important when you have workflows, especially outside of programming. In programming, yeah, you could probably use OpenAI Codex or some of the other ones, but what you can't do is have it running on your machine with access to your particular software, maybe very large amounts of data that you're processing, or particular software which is only available on your machine. This turns what is a programming agent into uh, a general purpose analytics and work agent, which is the main point here, because that's one of the main uses outside of simple coding. What other questions do you have? Let me see if I've missed any of the other questions. Great. So let's go back and let's take a look. And oh, it's asking, oh, can I? Okay, so here's something interesting. And let's go and just review the work that it's been doing on this really extensive program that I wanted to write on to make this general purpose calendar program for me. So it read through all of my guidance, my technical documents that were generated by Claude itself by using a long conversation I had about this program. So it wrote the requirements. Then it is coming up with a README. So it's actually creating a README file. So it's going through and defining. So it's creating, you'll notice it's creating the context. So it's creating a bunch of different Python modules here, settings. And what it's realizing is that it needs to have additional packages, and it's right down here. It needs additional packages that I don't have. So it's asking permission to do an install of PyTest because I mentioned in there that I wanted to have testing. Well, it realized it didn't really have that kind of testing available. So it's asking, can I use this? And I'm going to say yes, go ahead, install. So now it's going to ahead and installing that into my system for me to be able to use. Andrew is asking, regarding computer use, for example, if I wanted to know something about a specific automation that, say, a previous developer worked on, I could reference automation and any documentation to find out more about the automation. Yes, you could. So you can imagine you could do this in a number of different ways. One, you could do this with a standard chatbot, right? Uploading documentation and then going ahead and asking questions against that. But here you could also have a much larger corpus that you might work with, and you might want to do, so I'm going to go and have it do an install. You might have a subdirectory where all that documentation is there. You might ask it to read through. You might ask it to reformat that documentation, to do keyword searches. You can even have it set up to do just set up a quick search solution for you, just for you locally on your machine. Um, Having those files in your subdirectory turn out to be really quite helpful, especially if you point to them. So imagine you're doing a new type of automation. You might have some boilerplate code that you're using, but you know that it's going to involve something subtle about something that you're trying to automate. You might actually say, be sure to reference this particular file, which has additional important context as you're writing this solution. So that's how I would suggest using it. All the files in there, but pointing out where to go for additional guidance on anything which is difficult. All right, so now we're going to run the tests. And we're not going to be waiting for this to get finished, but I'm going to be fascinating to see how close it gets. So what other questions do you have about automation or about anything that we've talked about so far? Then let's go ahead and do a recap. Oh, Bill, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious. So you downloaded some software development kit, some SDK from Claude to do this all?
Actually, so what this looks like to install Claude is there are actually instructions. So if you go to Claude Code, I don't remember exactly what the so it has documentation on installing Claude. So yes, so you would actually go to your command line. You can use npm. There is a way to actually install it raw as well if you want to. That's a possibility as well. So this is called native install. That's another one. It's in beta. But yeah, so it would install the libraries necessary for you to be able to communicate back and forth and to actually do that kind of work. That's how you would install it.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? What programming language does Claude generate or understand best? Claude has really good coverage of programming languages. I have noticed that it's better at procedural languages, functional. It's gotten better, um, but one thing which is interesting, you can use a tool to help it do better with languages which maybe have, especially packages that get updated quickly. Um, we'll have another session at some point on something called MCP Model Context Protocol. This is a way of extending the capability of Claude and to easily do tool calls. So Claude can actually call this. It's called Context 7 and actually look up the most recent documentations that can do a better job of coding against languages that it may not know as well, or libraries which may be updated. So, but the common languages it's done really, really well with. I can tell you it's not terrific at one of the very first computer languages I learned, was called APL, but nobody knows APL. It's extraordinarily complex, and there's very little code that's available online. So I'm not surprised it doesn't know APL very well. But other common languages, it's quite good at. But remember, context is everything. So it's up to you to provide guidance on how a problem should be solved, the style of coding you want to use. If you have a particular style you want to follow, if you have a house style, you include that documentation as well and say, use this as guidance when you're coding. All right, other questions? Then let's do a recap. Feel free to go and put in your questions as you would like. So, why are we having the AI flash? We've had the capability of interacting with our prompts, with interacting with our chatbots. We've had tools for a while that could do things for us. So you notice when you're interacting with Claude or certainly Perplexity or ChatGPT, any of these things, you'll notice that it was able to do internet search. You'll notice it was often able to write its own quick program to solve a problem and then to come back to you. Other tools that it could use, it might have been using RAG. We've talked about that elsewhere. These were all possible. So what's different now? So what's different is a new special flexible instance that Claude was able to call to create binary workbooks, to create Excel workbooks, PowerPoints, and PDFs that wasn't possible to do before. So now you can interact directly with with the chatbot and then have it produce even highly complex workbooks for you to be able to work with, to download, and then to use. So that's what's changed, and this is getting closer, even in the chatbot, to to an agent, to an agentic workflow. An agent is tools plus some autonomy. That's an agent. And this gets closer to it because it's able to produce something and actually test out its solution, see if it's quite right, and then you download it. Then what also has changed is that working with uh, an agent locally, in this case, Claude Code, has gotten far more powerful with the release of Claude 4.5, able to run for many hours at a time to solve problems. Now, make no mistakes, Gemini is a great coder. Codex and is Codex, which is OpenAI's solution. So Google Gemini, a great coder, OpenAI Codex, great coder. But in this case, it's code which is being written and run in your laptop, which opens up the possibility of a powerful general purpose agent which can run for hours on problems which may not involve coding. Maybe it involves some coding, but you might have a larger problem that you're trying to solve. It could be analysis across multiple files. It could be some scientific workflow. So you can imagine Claude actually running a scientific workflow, actually running an analysis, maybe even running a machine, taking the results, doing an analysis of this. So think of this as extended problem solving. So that's what's new and that's what's different. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to go into office hours. I'd like to thank you very much for all of your time and for joining us here today for AI Flash. But I invite you to stick around with any additional questions that you have about agents and about the new capabilities that we have. And be on the lookout for our next AI Flash. We'll also be announcing within the next few weeks new workshops where we're going to be talking about using agents. We're going to be using agents for other kinds of problem solving. First up is going to be vibe coding for scientists. We're going to be talking about using agents for scientific problem solving, for research, and for more. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you again for all of your time and all of your questions. Stick around for office hours if you'd like to ask questions. Thank you.
Jesse, quick question for you.
Yes.
When we speak about LLMs, I know
Yep.
that one of the things that I kind of understand is I think about each LLM as an individual friend, right? So when I
Mm.
think about them having a different personality, with that being said, the value possibly in some of these aggregators, right? So such as like Poe.ai,
Mhm.
rather than using individualized models, right? Understanding that, like what we were talking about earlier, Claude does differently and it has different opportunities than OpenAI does. Have you walked down the aggregator road? And if so, what did you see as that defined value of being able to access multiple at the same time?
So assessing which model is good for a particular purpose, aggregators are perfect for that, right? Um, but here's the thing. Often the problem is not so much the model, but the prompt that we give it. So if the prompt that we give it is insufficient, lacks enough context, is not detailed enough, no matter what model we're using, it's probably not going to be that great. So what I found after sort of experimenting with aggregators to sort of see what model could do best, it almost seemed a little bit uneven, right? It's like all models do better the better context you give. So I do find myself going back and forth between different types of models for different types of things. For example, GPT-5 is great, creates beautiful front ends. So I actually will absolutely go to GPT-5 when I want to come up with a better idea for front end, and then bounce ideas there. Um, the different types of solutions that the different models offer also differ. So GPT-5, OpenAI's deep research acts in a particular way and acts very differently than deep research that you might get from Perplexity or that you would get from Claude, for example. But I tend not to explore for everything I do what the different models might do. This changes, though, when I have to go from the large models to the small models. Small models differ greatly in their capabilities. And with the one, absolutely, the aggregators are very, very helpful because you really have to discover which small model has the capabilities to solve your particular problem. Because, with some small models, they emphasize, efficient. So, IBM just came up with a great new series of Granite models, Granite 4.0. They're terrific and very, very efficient. How well do they stack up to the other small models for particular tasks I have? I'm gonna have to run them. I'm gonna have to run them in a test harness to actually see which one does better, because there the choice of small models really matters quite a bit. So, Bill, I hope that answers your question some.
It does, and it walks down those two roads, right? As far as whether or not you are aggregating at like something like Poe or what you had spoken to, which is the differentiation of like GPT o3 all the way up through 5,
Right.
understanding the deep research versus the standardized models. I think that's where you and I have discussed in the past.
Yes.
That really in the future will be a not a decisive point for us. That will be a decisive point for the model. And that's really what I'm looking towards is why is that not here yet? How do you speak to the model to ask it, have you ever tried that, Jesse? Have you ever tried to speak to the model to ask it which model of its own is most appropriate?
So here, I'll start my share up again just to uh, sort of point to. So when you're working with models, and I'll pop way up here. Come on. When you're working with models, it is always going to be doing the following, right? I'll do just a simpler model, right? So here you're going to be giving it some prompt. It's going to be producing a plausible response. It's always going to be giving a plausible response. So I would not trust it to give me an evaluation unless I saw that it was actually going searching and actually assessing across benchmarks, known capabilities. If it's doing that, then that's fine. But it has no self-knowledge because when it was trained, it wasn't trained on itself because it was still in training. So actually, models are terribly at being self-aware of what exactly their capabilities are unless they go and look it up and read about what's been written about them because they were in the middle of training, right? I mean, so it's kind of a catch-22. So I would still want a model. I'm not going to count on what a model says about itself if it's not doing that analytical work and having an analytical workflow that I can follow. So there's nothing privileged about the model asking about itself. If anything, you're going to get a worse answer because it's not up to date on itself. It can't be because it was it kind of learned about itself because it was training. Catch 22.
Thank you, Jesse.
Absolutely. Yes, so it's a recursive problem. Absolutely. And Andrew, I absolutely get it. Yeah, having multiple options is really good. I often strongly suggest to people that they come up with a metric. They have a way of measuring how good a model is at doing a particular task, because then you can do a couple of things. One, you can iterate your prompt, right? You can say, well, maybe I need to rephrase it this way. Maybe I'm not giving it enough guidance or information. And then you can look and see if the performance has gone up. Is it doing better on your test cases? If so, fantastic. Or you can try multiple models, right? You can say, I'm giving all these models the same thing, and then I'm going to judge how they do. This model is much better than the other models. I'm going to use this one. Um, you can't necessarily trust just benchmarks to choose a best model. Models often get access to the answers for benchmark challenges. Some benchmarks are really well defined, and so you can't cheat on them. Um, but models are, they'll learn anything they're given, and if they go and find something, they're going to use it. And so it's possible that they've trained on the answers for benchmarks. So really, the only bulletproof way is to have your own metric for the very particular type of problem that you're trying to solve and see how well it does. Great questions. What other questions do you have?
Nobody's going to type. Nobody's going to come off mute. I got another question.
Yeah.
More and more models are becoming closed. They're falling into closed ecosystems. As they
Mhm.
fall into those closed ecosystems, we all start to discuss what the fear of the AI winter looks like, right? When we start walking into that cyclical where the data starts to eat itself and there is no new data
Mm.
until we all walk towards AGI. Do you have a vision either from yourself or from Vanderbilt, just as far as a path forward as we lack
Mhm.
new data?
So let me point out uh, something because there are a couple of important issues to sort of keep in mind here. So let me go ahead and I'm going to pop over to here where I had So I had this long conversation, an hour-long conversation. This was the original text. but I'm creating a lot more information because I had a transcript of a conversation, right? And then what I had here was I asked the model to actually come up with new documents, right? So this thing that it created right here is new information. Yes, it was written by an LLM, but it's based on my conversations and it's based on the guidance that I gave it of how to reformat this. This is new information. This is new. It's LLM generated, but it's not AI slop. This is actually useful, actionable. I would be happy training on this data. So that's one thing. All the data that's being generated by AI isn't poisoned in some way. Some of it's higher quality than others, but it's new in many ways. So that's one. The other is that we constantly have new information which is being generated, text, as I mentioned, with the transcripts. Three, we're not just training on text anymore. And we're not just training on data, which is generated by humans anymore, because now we're able to train directly on video. We're able to train on images. We're able to train on audio. And these are not human mediated necessarily, right? Images, yes, people may have taken the images. Video, yes, people may have taken the video. But think about everything that you can learn from video. You can learn from how it's being spoken. You can learn from the dynamics. What's going to happen when I drop this? Oh, the model's going to learn about the gravitational constant. There's a great deal to be learned directly from data that's not mediated by humans. So that's going to continue. We are training on an immense amount of information, but we're also learning that the order in which you train, how you train, and the other capabilities you give your models also matter. So I might train on the same data that you train on, but I did it in a different order, and my model has different capabilities. Therefore, the results I get are very, very different. So AI winter, even if we had no more advancements of any AI from anywhere where we are right now for the next 5 years, no model got any better, we would still be seeing the mining the advancements we could have from the models that we have right now. We just don't know how to use everything we've got. So I just showed you some capabilities which are going to revolutionize, absolutely revolutionize how we do work. It doesn't matter what field you're in. What I just showed you is going to revolutionize how we do it because now we have a way of solving these long horizon problems uh, and to explore. Can it do better than we do? Maybe, maybe not, but doesn't matter. I can try out 10 different solutions and choose the best one. Now, I don't have to spend 30 hours doing something. I have it spend, I can do 10 different instances and then choose which one came up with the best solution. So that kind of work is going to be greatly accelerated, even if the models themselves don't improve. And finally, AGI. So AI is really spiky. So AI is very different from our brand of intelligence. Um, there are some things that it's very, very good at, better than human. Absolutely, in some things, just like a calculator is a lot better than you are at arithmetic. Sorry, it's better at arithmetic, right? But there are also things that it just is not good at all, and it's extremely spiky, meaning capability, lack of capability, capability. Even just think about what problems you want to solve. AI is not great at coming up with what problems to solve. It's not great at knowing what's going to be preferred by humans necessarily. It's not great at the big picture. It can get lost in the particulars. So that kind of guidance, that's why those prompts in that context are so important, right? We have to give good guidance for it to be able to run for 30 hours. If you don't give it excellent guidance, it won't be able to do it. It's human. Humans are necessary for that. So are we hitting AGI sometime soon? No. But are the capabilities for some aspects superhuman? Absolutely. But it's spiky. So do you call that AGI? I wouldn't, because we're still a long way from that. But we're right in there with extremely useful things to augment what we do. I hope that answered your question, Bill.
Sure, thank you.
Absolutely. And Andrew, you had another question, or actually, Tom, you were first. What types of capabilities do you see companies like Anthropic and OpenAI building into their models, say in the next 6 months? Well, first of all, I see, and the race is definitely on. I mean, um, Codex held the crown for coding for about a week, and then along comes Anthropic. I think that we're going to start seeing more and more generalized agents. So I think that this idea of being able to solve problems by giving the models more and more tools and more autonomy is going to be important. We're going to see more solutions that look like that. I think OpenAI and others have been very clear that they think that the way forward of working is going to be might even be AI first. This week also Microsoft announced that Claude Sonnet 4.5 is going to be available in Copilot. Copilot also changed. And so Copilot no longer just operates sort of within, it too can create workbooks. So it's using that workbook creation capability. Remember, it's not just workbook creation, it's also fixing. Here's my crummy workbook. I did a terrible job. I know I did a terrible job. Fix it, make it work, follow best practices. That's what work is going to look like. And more, they're going to be trying to step into the space of doing and owning more of that general work cycle. They don't want to just be on the edge. They want to be in the center of people doing their work. Andrew, you asked, in automation, could we move from synchronous rule-based bots to autonomous agents that can plan, recover, and adapt over long tasks? Man, I think that's where we're going to go. You still want to use the rule-based where you can, though, right? Because the problem is we still have hallucination. I mean, that's all that models do. It's whether it's guided or not. But are you, so maybe it's a 1 in a million problem now, but that means if you run a couple of million a day, you're going to hit them a couple of times a day. So where you can, you want to have that hard-coded, provably correct solution. Maybe that's a tool that the AI calls. So it's not all AI, but you want to have those tools in, make those available. This is how we solved it before. Here are the cases where someone needs to look. So maybe it's a failure mode, right? Our automation no longer works. Now you call the AI to call something like Puppeteer or something like that to go and look and see what's happening, diagnose, and to modify those rules and so it will work again. Somebody moved the submit button, or they changed the wording on it. And so the AI can actually recode the tools so they begin working again. So that's nice because now it's not a brittle solution, but you're also not always having to spend all that money on tokens and you don't have to depend on that working because now you have tests, right? Either these are working again, either the AI fixed these or they didn't. If they fixed it, it runs, it passed the test, you're good. Andrew, did that answer your question? And I'll take that as a yes. Fantastic, great. Stephen, great to have you here. I think all AI agents face this issue. Will it learn or happens try to generate results that match our personal style? So here's the thing. Let's go back to our graphic for a quick moment. So we're going to go back to this graphic. When the models are working, the attention and the MLP, that's multilayer perceptron, that is the part that has learned, has already been trained. None of this is changing. Training is effortful. Training takes a lot of time and it's expensive. So when it looks like the models are learning about you, what's happening is it's writing a file off to the side with some information about you, and it's putting that back into your context. So it's not actually learning about you. It's just taking notes and recalling those notes so it can actually give a better response. So it's not evolving over time. The only time the models change, get better, do something is when we train them. So that's not going to be a short-term problem. So Nicholas, you asked, how can AI agents, perhaps Gen AI as a focus here, right, improve data literacy? Now that's really a good question. We're at a tipping point, right? You could use AI for all of this and then learn nothing new, right? This has already been coded. It gives me my answer. But remember, AI works best when you give it important context. That means the more you know your data, the more you know your job, your area of research, your area of business, your area of government, the more you understand that, the better you'll be able to interact with AI. And you can use AI to help you uncover those things. I don't understand this file. Help me explore. Is there anything unusual here? I think this is what's going on. Let me go ahead, tell me if I'm right here. So it can be interactive so you can accelerate your learning and then use that learning to drive AI better. So it could be a virtuous cycle. All right, we're at the end here. I thank you all very much for your questions. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for joining for our AI Flash. Have a good day.